Okay, folks, it's about time to get rolling here. Just make sure we have all the various live streams up and running. Hopefully, if I got this set up right here today, we're streaming live on the Training for Climbing Facebook page, YouTube channel, and the Training for Climbing Instagram, which trying to get this dialed up here and running. So welcome to the Training Cafe. I'm Hörst, coming to you from my home in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where it's cold and raining outside. This is training weather in my book. It's not climbing weather. So for me, my climbing season is about done. And so I'm going to talk to you here for a few minutes about kind of the philosophy as I see it and kind of what I'm going to do heading into the winter training season, where I'll do very little or no outdoor climbing the next couple of months. Instead, I'll be working at home, having some family time, the holidays, enjoy that season. Hopefully have my son's home with my wife and I, train a lot through the winter season, hopefully not gain any weight, and then put myself in a good position to have a good start to the 2025 climbing season. And I don't know, my first outdoor climbing might not be until late February or early March. So I've got some time between now and then to get in a really good, perhaps 10 or 12 week training block. So I'm going to talk to you kind of about the philosophy, what things you should be thinking about here in the coming weeks. And when I'm all done with that, we'll get to kind of a free form question and answer session with whoever's viewing. You can type in a brief question to the comments box. I'm looking at the comments box, feed from the YouTube channel and the Training for Climbing Facebook. So if you type something into Instagram, I may not get it into my recording interface here. So the best place to type in the comments would be probably if you're watching live on the Training for Climbing YouTube channel. And while you're there, why not click subscribe if you're not already, and then you'll get notice of future videos that I release through the YouTube channel. Of course, this is the Training Cafe, which means we sip coffee together. And so it's kind of been our ritual in doing this the last few years that we begin each episode by raising our cup and toasting together. Climbers around the world unite in the spirit of training for climbing. There's nothing better than coffee for breakfast, for lunch. I don't have it for dinner, but by about 2 or 3 in the afternoon, I have had my fill and cut myself off just so I can hopefully get a good night's sleep each evening. So let's get things started here. And I guess in terms of kicking off winter training season, I'm a veteran coach, been doing this a long time. And I think, the very first thing you should do at the end of a climbing season is to pause for a moment, ponder the last, 10 or 12 months, and take a bit of an inventory of wins and losses, and maybe, consider what some of the key lessons you learned were. Because, climbing is a complex sport that really demands a lot from us, obviously physically, but also, in terms of technique and tactics and strategy. The whole mental side of climbing is something that you can improve in year over year for decades. I'm still learning, and I've been at this since the late 1970s. So odds are nobody is watching this that's been climbing longer than I have. And so I guarantee you still have a lot to learn, whether you know it or not. When I was young and cocky, I thought I knew it all. And then, you kind of wise up as you gain experience and realize how much you don't know. And that is when you can really become self-aware to what you need to do to take your game to the next level. Again, thinking all of the domains, physical, technical, mental, even when it gets to the nuance of things like rest and recovery, we know that plays a big role, especially as you pursue, peak performance, your, genetic potential. So, I like to, when I'm working with athletes or refining my own program, you got to consider all of those things and not be obsessed by the new exercise or, how much finger force you can generate. That's one piece of the puzzle. But I see people on Instagram having arguments over some ridiculous nuance of finger training. And I think to myself, that nuance is perhaps important. So I don't want to dismiss it, but in the grand scheme of things, there are so many, there are myriad of things that affect your climbing performance. And you ought to be really trying to elevate your game in all of those areas rather than get bogged down on arguing over some little nuance of, is it better to hang or better to lift or better to rest? Well, all three of those are good things in the right setting. So there's a lot of argument over nonsense, in my opinion. But in any case, the bigger picture you can see and things you consider, and identifying again through an inventory of the past year what shortcomings you had, when you didn't send your routes, reach your goals. Why? What was the reason? What was the crux? What was the thing holding you back? Was it just pumped forearms, or was there something that led to you not having the energy to send your route? Inefficient technique or strategy, or a scared, fearful, tense mindset. There's a lot of things there to be had. So, maybe write down one column your wins, one column your losses, another column what the lessons learned were. And then that puts you in a great position to look forward and begin to put the puzzle pieces in place for the 2025 climbing season and training season as well. And so let's move on to kind of the second thing you should be considering here as you kick off into winter training season. And that is to evaluate kind of the state of your body, like how healthy you are. Are you coming out of the season with any aches or pains? Hopefully not, but many climbers do. And so if that's you, if there's an ache or pain, now is the time to address that. Hopefully, put yourself on the road to healing by doing some rehab, or if it's something significant, seeing a PT or a doctor to kind of get to the bottom of it. Hopefully that's not the case, but if it is, now is the time to act and kind of get yourself on the road to recovery. If you're just kind of fatigued after, a long autumn climbing season where you've been climbing hard, bouldering hard, projecting hard, perhaps what you need right now is a week or two of a deload, or maybe a week or two off. Now, I have changed my mind from years ago. I used to say, just take a month or 6 weeks off during the winter, and that's a good reset. And yeah, that can be a good reset. You'll come out of it hopefully really motivated, but you'll also come out of it if you take 4 to 6 weeks off and don't do much of anything physical. You'll lose a lot of ground. You'll lose a little bit of strength and power. You'll lose a lot of endurance, because endurance is very plastic. It will leave you quickly if you're not putting in your climbing mileage. And so I'm no longer a proponent of that. Take a month or two off during the winter season. I'm a proponent of a brief deload where you take a week or two after a hard training block or after a hard performance block, and kind of let your body catch up and recover, let your mind get renewed and fresh and motivated, but still kind of an active deload where you're doing something, running a little bit, stretching a little bit, maybe doing some easy climbing, some weightlifting, nothing heavy duty, but just, something to stay engaged physically. And then surge right back into your training block. So forget the idea of a month or two off. You'll lose too much ground that you'll spend, the first 3 months or half a year of next year just trying to make up what you lost during taking a month or two off. So I'm not a fan of that, but I am a fan of addressing your injuries or your fatigue now, and kind of nipping it in the bud, and then setting a course for success in the new year by putting together a training program and beginning to implement it as you head into the holiday season. Now, let's say something about the holiday season. This is, in my opinion, something to be enjoyed. And so while I really try to, keep a tight grip on my diet throughout the year, and even through the holidays, I'm careful to not eat excessively, drink excessively, eat too many sugary snacks. But I will let myself have a bit here and there. Uh, if I'm at a holiday party or a friend or family's house and I'm offered something, I am not likely to turn it down. But what I will do is limit the intake and not mindlessly consume sugar, alcohol, holiday foods, and meals. And also, if I know I have a holiday party coming up, I'll schedule a rigorous day of training ahead of that party. Kind of arrive at the party with a big calorie deficit for the day. And so if I do consume 1,000 or 2,000 calories at a big meal with friends or relatives or whatnot, if I arrive at the party with 1,000 calorie deficit for the day, then the damage won't be too significant. But if I eat a regular breakfast and lunch ahead of that, a big holiday dinner, then inevitably I'm going to finish the day with a huge calorie surplus, which it's not hard to pack on the pounds. I know I've seen in the media, various articles about how here in America, the gluttonous approach that many folks have to the Thanksgiving holiday, which was just at the end of November, and then the Christmas and New Year's holiday, with the gluttonous eating and drinking a lot, as many folks do, it's not uncommon for people to put on 5 or 10 pounds of weight. And, for a climber, that is massive. That's a huge weight gain. You won't climb the same, especially if you like steep boulders and routes, if you have an extra 5 or 10 pounds hanging around you. That's non-productive weight, if you put on body fat. So enjoy the holidays, but do it in a smart way, and don't forget in your mind's eye what your goals are in terms of training and climbing in the new year. Another thing to really consider in the coming days, weeks, hopefully by January 1st, you can assemble a short list of goals for the 2025 season. Now, those goals could include some physical goals in terms of strength benchmarks, endurance benchmarks that you will use to help direct your training and motivate your training in the gym in the coming weeks. But more importantly, what are your actual climbing goals for 2025? Places you want to visit, trips you want to do, routes you want to send, boulders you want to send, competitions you want to do well or try to win. Putting together a list of important goals, is what really helps fuel the workouts, even on days when you're tired or not feeling like going to the gym. If you can, picture brightly in your mind's eye a few of the goals that can mobilize you and energize you to get to the gym and to follow through with the game plan of training. So, ask yourself, what are like your 3 top goals for 2025? Write them down, figure out what you can do this winter to help put you on the path towards those goals. And it's a very motivating, empowering thing. And I guess in terms of building a system for success in a training program, well, that is something I can't get into the nuts and bolts of here because we're all different. Our goals are different. Our training history is different. Certainly our age, our genetics, there's so many things that are different about us that there's no one size fits all training program. And I'm a big believer that you really need to have a personalized training program that meets all aspects of your life, your time available, your training resources in terms of equipment and gym availability, your availability to rock, and then just where you're at in climbing and what your body can take. A pro climber of 20 plus years experience is going to need a much higher training intensity and also training volume, especially if they're a route climber, than someone who's only been in the sport 5 years. And that 5-year climber shouldn't try to model after or do what the 20-year veteran does. You need to progress gradually year over year in terms of elevating your training and doing things that are gradually more intensive. As your connective tissues get stronger and your muscles get stronger, you can each year hopefully take things up a notch and eventually perhaps land you where that veteran pro of 20 years is at. Someday perhaps you can get there, but the intelligent approach is to take it one step at a time as your body will allow. But here's just a few things to consider when it comes to designing your off-season training program. And obviously, the first thing is your goals. If your goal is to climb El Cap, your training program is going to be a little different than if your goal is to climb some double-digit boulder that's only 10 moves long. If you're a sport climber versus a trad climber, again, the training programs will likely need to be a bit different. If you're exclusively climb with the rope on versus exclusively boulder, again, two very different training programs. I'm mainly a route climber. I dabble in bouldering, mostly indoors or on like a kilter board, but it's a training tool for me. It's not the outcome that I'm after. I'm after sport climbing, especially steep kind of endurance oriented routes that I really enjoy and that fit me well as an older climber. And so for me, the number one thing about my winter training program beginning today is that I need to at least twice a week to have a high volume workout, because I mentioned a little while ago that endurance is very plastic. The things that give you that great route endurance, the mitochondria density and efficiency, the capillarity, these are things that will come and go rather quickly, especially the mitochondria function is plastic in the terms of just a couple of weeks. If you would take the month of December off or take the winter off and just boulder and strength train as a route climber, that would be a really stupid thing to do. You need to, kind of like a runner putting in their base mileage year round. If you're a competitive runner or marathoner, you got to put in that mileage pretty much year round. And for a route climber, it's somewhat the same mindset. So I will at least twice a week through the winter season put in more of a aerobic, climbing specific aerobic session. It may be on my tread wall here at the house, or it would be in a climbing gym. I will, during the winter, go to the Reach Climbing and Fitness Gym in Philadelphia, which has great overhanging lead walls, and going there and doing a dozen routes, sub-maximal routes, I should add, in a session will get me a really good aerobic, climbing specific aerobic workout, as will my tread wall. And then I'll also do a bit of running, a bit of generalized aerobic training, because I want to go into next season and have not lost any aerobic base. Now, I will also do some strength training and try to recapture. I'm an older climber, so I'm not breaking a lot of new ground when it comes to strength and power anymore. If you're a younger climber, you can still break some new ground with intelligent training. And so winter is a good time to do that as well. And that's, of course, really important if you're a boulderer. But even if you're a sport climber, that's important as well. Sport climber obviously has a bigger picture to consider when it comes to training because of the importance of ramping up or maintaining that aerobic energy system season over season. Whereas for the boulderer, that's less critical. If there's any glaring weaknesses in your climbing game, in your training game, that should be something that you address over the winter. Perhaps you have weak shoulders. Maybe you're prone to shoulder tweaks or feeling like some movement in your shoulder. Perhaps there's a bit of an injury you're not aware of. Now would be a good time to strengthen your shoulders during the winter training season. Or if you really sense that there's a weak grip position, whether it's pocket or pinch, some targeted training of that during the winter season would be a good thing. And think out of, don't think of just the obvious things. How about your lock off strength, your ability to pull, hold down, and instead of locking it off here, being able to really yard down and lock it off low? That's something that needs trained. Doing pull-ups doesn't train that. You need to do a very kind of specialized exercise routine to develop that end range strength. So again, that's something that's good to train during the winter season. And then finally, as you're kind of shaping your program for the winter season ahead, consider the wild cards. And here's just a few wild cards. There's many, but one obviously is nutrition. I kind of touched on that already. You want to, avoid any weight gain over the holidays if at all possible. But generally, just feeding yourself in a very healthy way to support and get the most out of your workouts. If you're training hard, but yet protein deficient, you're not getting the most out of your workouts. And so, a good whole food diet, comprised of healthy foods, as little processed foods as possible, although they're hard to escape entirely. I eat some processed foods, but if it can comprise, say, only 20% of your diet, that would be good. And if the other 80% is comprised of whole foods, then you're doing great. And shooting for 100 grams or more of protein per day is a really good thing. That might require some supplemental protein powders. If you are like me and only eat a few servings of meat per week, it's going to be tough to get that much protein without supplemental protein. I drink a couple of glasses of PhysiVantage weapons grade whey each day, post-workout and before bed. And I have PhysiVantage supercharged collagen pre-workout to provide the collagen-specific amino acids that can actually be taken up by the connective tissues as you're loading them during your workout. Don't need to be any long-winded there, but think about the role nutrition plays. Sleep, obviously, rest days, obviously, you need to take some days off. You can't finger train every day. You can do very low load work on a daily basis, but you can't do the intensive stuff really more than 2 or 3 days a week. Doing high intensity training or climbing or bouldering at your limit 4 or 5 days a week is a prescription for injury. Very few climbers' bodies can hold up to that. And I guess the other wild card is just in general self-sabotage, different ways that climbers sabotage their efforts, their goals. It could be, having a great workout plan for the day and then blowing it off for a social event or something that's just not that important to you, but you get drawn into. Obviously, subjecting yourself to large amounts of trashy food or alcohol or nights of bad sleep, those are forms of self-sabotage because we know we need to avoid that and behave differently to get the most out of our workouts and to perform our best as athletes. So there's a lot of ways different climbers come to, or just athletes or human beings in general, engage in forms of self-sabotage. And so, kind of think back to the past and keep an eye out in the future for what things you might succumb to that are counterproductive. And I'll tell you, as a final comment here, and then I'm going to move on to answering your training questions. The one thing that amazes me, I'm a fairly disciplined person. After all these years, I really am set in my ways and, do not succumb often to things that are going to be counterproductive. though I'm not perfect, that's for sure. When I'm around the really top tier pros, it's amazing how diligent they are to follow through with their game plan day in and day out, stick to their diet protocol and training plan, and their commitment to following through in all of the little ways that add up and make them who they are. And that's really what separates, kind of the pros from the wannabe pros. And so with that, we're about 25 minutes in already to this episode of the Training Cafe. Again, if you have coffee, please sip with me. And let's get on to a few training questions, and then we'll wrap this up here in another 10 or 15 minutes. Let me just scroll up here. I see a handful of questions in here. Let me see here. Okay, first up, Peter Cowhill. He says, "Hey, Coach, you mentioned in one of your podcasts or training videos that collagen is not absorbed if you are taking naproxen." No, I don't think that's exactly what I said, but the idea is that there's definitely research showing that ibuprofen in particular, and I'm not sure how broad it is when it comes to anti-inflammatories, but definitely ibuprofen suppresses collagen synthesis. So it's kind of the slowing down of the collagen synthesis in your body that would result from chronic consumption of ibuprofen, and whether naproxen falls into that same situation is quite possible. I don't quite understand the biochemistry behind the conflict, but again, there's published research, and there's on our website a link to a couple of those studies. So again, taking ibuprofen or naproxen infrequently would not be problematic. But if you're one of these climbers that's taking it on a daily basis, that could be very problematic. It could be contributing to injury in terms of, or slow recovery from injury. So, taking the collagen powder to add, to feed your body with those collagen specific amino acids that are the building blocks, the connective tissues, your tendons, your ligaments, cartilage, are about 65 to 70% comprised of just two amino acids, glycine and proline. And so if your diet is deficient of those two amino acids, as it is in many hard training athletes, then you are holding up the process of remodeling and rebuilding the collagen structures in your body, whether it's the A2 pulleys in your fingers or whether it's in your knees or shoulders. It's going to be a slower process if you're not giving yourself enough glycine and proline. So that's the benefit of hydrolyzed collagen, is you consume that and you're adding more of those critical amino acids. Again, the ibuprofen naproxen is kind of acting on a different part of the equation, not so much the absorption of the amino acids, but more the body's ability to synthesize collagen. And a follow-up here from Peter. He says he's a 75-year-old climber still trying to improve, but has arthritis in thumbs. So he's taking the naproxen now and then. And again, if it's 1 or 2 days a week, probably it's not so counterproductive if it's a daily thing. What you might want to try to do, and what I do if I am in need of pain relief, is Tylenol, or get generic Tylenol. It's super cheap. You can take 2 of those pretty much on a daily basis, and it doesn't seem to be harmful, though if you take a lot of them, it would be harmful. Tylenol can kill you if you take a lot of it at once. Again, natural, you might try some natural alternative kind of painkillers. Physivantage, we make a product called Redux HP, which is a blend of curcuminoids, from turmeric. It's very much a refined product, a high potency and clinically dosed product, along with tart cherry powder, which is a proven anti-inflammatory as well. And so if anyone out there has not tried a natural pain reliever, while it won't have the potency or power of a prescription product, it is quite effective, and quite a few pro climbers use our products, the Redux, on a daily basis to tamp down inflammation a bit. And of course, you don't want to completely reduce inflammation to zero, because that is part of our adaptive process. Our signal for adaptations is the post-workout inflammation. You don't want to tamp that down with cortisone pills or with cold plunges chronically, because you will get less out of your training. But of course, if you're dealing with arthritis or an injury, there is a time and a place for these anti-inflammatories. And really, Peter, as a 75-year-old climber, the key is just to stay active and moving, and kind of whatever it takes for you to do that, I think is the right thing. So let's keep at it for another 10 or 20 years, Peter. From Dennis, he says, is it possible for someone who trains in primarily a bouldering only gym to become a strong sport climber? Does pulling V8 moves directly translate to climbing 513? Well, if you put a V8 move up on a route, you would have a 513, no doubt about it. But there are also a lot of 513 routes, for instance, at the Red River Gorge, but other steep climbing areas. There are 513s that have no move over, V4. So, bouldering hard isn't the answer. It's having this huge aerobic capacity, and also the technique and mental skills to persevere through a steep, pumpy climb, knowing how to rest and recover, knowing how to climb fast when the holds get small. And a lot of that comes from experience in those settings, but also the aerobic capacity, getting your climbing specific muscles to adapt in ways that you can make a lot of ATP via the aerobic pathway. That needs trained in a very specific way. And to answer your question, yes, you can train that in a bouldering gym, but you would do it by doing circuits, sub-maximal circuits, not circuits that are difficult, individual boulders that are at your limit. That would be a very anaerobic way of training, and it would not develop the aerobic energy system so much. So what you would want to do, if say V8 is your limit boulder, you would want to go to the gym and climb a boatload of V1 to V4 kind of boulders in rapid succession with just minimal rest in between. And if you did 5 or 10 of those in a row with just a brief chalk up and then right on to the next one, it would almost simulate a longer route, where that brief chalk up might be a bucket where you're shaking out on the route. Instead, you're on the ground going to the next V2 or V3 to do. And so it's a very different kind of mindset. A lot of people go to the bouldering gym or to the system wall to project hard boulders because we feel good, doing hard things and breaking new ground. But in doing that, when you're bouldering near your limit or projecting limit boulders where you're falling off a lot, you're doing 2, 3, 4 moves and falling off, and then you're doing that again and falling off. Those brief, intense efforts are very anaerobic. And while the aerobic energy system contributes in a small way to those efforts, it's primarily, the anaerobic energy system that is being worked and trained. And again, that has its limitations to, 2, 3, at most 4 sessions a week of that high intensity type training. It's got to be, appropriate for your training experience. But again, if route climbing is your thing, I would go to the gym and maybe 2 sessions a week boulder limit, but then 2 sessions a week be very disciplined to climb very easy routes and not get hung up on numbers, but instead target volume. And pretty much every boulder should be one that you can do relatively easily, certainly fight through on your first effort. If it takes multiple efforts, then it's too hard to be on your aerobic bouldering circuit. So hopefully that helps you out there, Dennis. Real world climbing. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you here. He says he's having ACL meniscus surgery end of January. Ideas other than training aspects to do for the 3 to 4 months lower body recovery. Yeah, I had a meniscus surgery myself like 30 years ago, and I have very vague recollections of what I was doing after the surgery. I know I was only on crutches for a few days or maybe a week, and it was a rapid return because I didn't have. It was not a major repair, but your ACL surgery is certainly something that is more significant and will require a longer ramp up of rehab and such. Obviously, you can still do a lot of finger training, a lot of core training. It's going to be hard to do generalized aerobic training. Things like running are probably out of the picture. Riding a bike probably out of the picture for several months. Perhaps some swimming might be an option for generalized training, just for general fitness and cardiovascular effort. But when it comes to the climbing specific stuff, the obvious things, working on core strength. You can do some upper body weightlifting for your push muscles. You can do all the hangboard training. This might be a situation where doing the no hang, lifting exercises might not be the best thing, with a freshly repaired knee, whereas walking underneath and hanging on a hangboard would be perhaps the better thing for you to do in this situation. So I don't have any genius advice for you here. I think you're a very seasoned climber and can probably conjure up what things you can do to stay in great climbing shape and come back quickly. If your surgery's in the end of January, I'd like to think that by summer climbing season, you're back in the full swing of things. So good luck with that. Let me know how it goes. Next up, he says, I often struggle with big dynamic moves to crimps. I can hold the crimp easily if I climb up there and kind of grab them statically, I guess he's saying. But to do the dynamic move, hit the crimp and stick it, seems impossible. So he says it appears to be a contact strength issue. And yes, that is correct. If you can reach up kind of statically and grab a crimp hold, and engage it and hold it and then move on that hold, but you can't move quickly or dynamically to that same hold and stick it, that speaks to contact strength, which is relates to rate of force development. How many milliseconds it takes to, when we measure these things, it's measured in milliseconds, thousandths of a second. And someone with poor contact strength, it might take them 500 or 600 milliseconds to summon peak strength on a hold, whereas someone with very good contact strength might summon peak strength in 300 milliseconds. And so to develop that, it's a nervous system thing. It's about recruitment and neural drive. And, the gold standard for training that up is plyometric training, or for a climber, campus board style training. Now, this is something you have to ease into, and not everybody can just jump on a campus board and do, crazy stuff. You need to ease into it. The first step is to just kind of stand under a campus board with your feet on the ground and move your hands up and down. Now, that very controlled movement, which is not so dynamic, isn't really going to elicit a high rate of force development. But as soon as you remove your feet from the ground and begin to, like, say, ladder up a campus board, or for an advanced person, begin to do double dyno on a campus board, that will elicit a much higher rate of force development. So it's something you want to ease into gradually, maybe introduce it twice a week into your training program. I would strongly recommend you, if you're going to play around on a campus board, obviously you need to be well warmed up. I think for most people, it helps to, as part of the warm-up, do a bit of a hangboard or no hang lifting grip session to get your recruitment up before you get onto the campus board. That kind of gets you fired up, turned on, and ready to engage the campus board in a productive way. But again, it's got to be something you introduce very gradually in small doses. People who just spin up a campus program quickly or do a lot of it because they get psyched about, oh, this is fun, it feels so good, it looks so impressive, let me get that Instagram video of me doing 1 5 9. People who get obsessed on it often end up injured quickly. So it's like just a dash added to your workout is often enough. And so I think you can get better at engaging those crimp holds quickly on dynamic movements by introducing gradually a bit of campus training to your program. So hopefully that works. I see your follow-up message about you tried the jump and catch training on the campus board. He's talking about, like, if you stand in front of a campus board, you jump and catch a rung. That is a form of campus training that elicits a high rate of force development. But, for some people, that's an impossible exercise if they're not quite ready, or other people, it seems quite easy. Trying to jump high on a small rung, it just sounds like an accident waiting to happen, and lacks control. I'd rather, see you focus on up and downs, or if you're strong enough, some drop catches that are a little more controlled than trying to jump as high as you can jump and grab a rung. So be careful. And again, a small dose is all that's really needed a couple days a week. More than that tempts injury. On we go to Mike Roth, a 55-year-old New River Gorge climber. More of a recreational climber. I don't know that I see a question, though. If you climb at the New, you've probably clipped a few bolts that I've placed, maybe more than a few, because I've put up a couple hundred routes there back in the day. Such a great climbing area. So, Mike, I don't know. Let me scroll down and see if there's a question here from you. Oh, yeah, here. He says, opinion on frequency on adding shoulder strengthening on top of 2 or 3 workout current load to avoid injury to shoulders and elbows. Not exactly sure what you're asking here, but if it's with regard to shoulder specific training, like the rotator cuff, the deltoids, the scapular stabilizers like the pecs and the serratus anterior, those types of pushing movements twice a week, I think, is the right dose. You do it 3 or 4 days a week, it's not an efficient use of your time, and it will really possibly bulk you up. You're not a bodybuilder. You do not want to be on a bodybuilding program. And so a small commitment twice a week to training, the rotator cuff, hitting it with a few different exercises is a very smart thing. Using a TRX trainer or sling trainer or similar to do some Y's, I's, and T's, a very smart thing to do a couple days a week. But to get on an excessive weightlifting program kind of is to go off on a tangent that puts you more in a bodybuilder training program than in a training for climbing program. So you want strong shoulders for to make you more resilient and robust as you push hard on boulders and routes. Strong shoulders make for stronger fingers. That's proven. So it's not something to be ignored, but again, to go down the road of, excessive weightlifting in a way that builds a lot of mass is counterproductive for most climbers. So hopefully that helps you out there, Mike. Follow-up question here from David, I guess adds on to my discussion of going to the gym and training aerobic fitness he wants to know my thoughts on auto belay. I think it's a great tool for sure. When I go to Reach Gym in Philadelphia to do more of a climbing specific aerobic endurance session, I'll put in my first 4 routes using the auto belays. Now, by necessity, the auto belay routes can't be super steep. They might overhang 10 degrees at the most, and they tend to be near vertical. So grade wise, they're going to tend to be easier routes. Like when I do those first 4 routes on the auto belay, I probably do like an 8, a 9, maybe 2 5/10s. Certainly the gyms will have harder routes set on the auto belays, but if they're near vertical routes on an auto belay and they're 5/12, well, then they can have really little holds, technical bouldery moves, which is not the stuff really for a gym aerobic session. But if your gym has a lot of those kind of moderate to moderate difficulty routes on an auto belay, you can certainly do some of your training there. But I think it's also good to get on a steeper lead wall, something that overhangs 20, 30, 40 degrees, that has large enough holes that you can, again, climb without going deeply anaerobic. It's okay to get a little pumped, even moderately pumped, but never kind of that sickening pump, never above maybe a 7 out of 10 on an intensity scale. If you're kind of in that 5 to 7.5 zone of intensity or pump, that's okay. But it should be a pump you can always climb through and never reach failure. If you are, then you have gone too deeply anaerobic for it to really qualify or be effective as a climbing specific aerobic training session. So you're kind of trying to find that threshold between aerobic and anaerobic and go back and forth over that threshold, and kind of remaining in control throughout your session on your routes. And as fatigue grows, you have to start dialing things back a little bit and get on some easier routes. So, again, as a rule of thumb, whatever your limit route is, your climbing specific aerobic training session should be on routes typically 2, 3, 4 grades below your limit. My limit, I'm as far as rep pointing, a mid 513 climber on a good day. And so if I'm going to the gym with the intention of really having a more of a aerobic climbing specific session, like I said, I'll warm up on an 8, a 9, do a few 10s, do a few 11s. I might, when I'm fully warmed up, do a few laps on 12A or 12B. Again, my limit being mid 13, but never any higher. And then I'll be back down to a couple of 11s and maybe a couple of 10s. And when I'm all said and done, I'll have climbed 12, 13, 14, 15 routes over say a 3-hour session, all of them without falling, all of them without getting pumped out of my mind, all of them, routes selected to be within my on-site capabilities, and all of them therefore being more aerobic than they are anaerobic. Now, everybody's got to find their window and not let it escalate. That's the tough thing in climbing gyms is, let's try this route, or it's easy to let things, mission creep is a saying I like to use. You go to the gym, you should have a mission for the day, whatever it is. What is your energy system you're targeting? And then stay on mission. Don't let it creep and go onto somebody else's mission. So hopefully that helps you out. Okay, we're going to wrap things up here in just a minute. Let's take one more question here. Dean Rogers, would you consider winter climbing in Chattanooga, Tennessee to be worthwhile? Yeah, I know a lot of people that go to Chat in the winter. I think, it can be cold there, no doubt. So maybe it's more of a bouldering destination. But I'll tell you, I think, there are definitely some warm crags there that you could go to on a sunny day in the 40s and have a great time sport climbing. I'm thinking of Denny Cove is a south-facing crag gets a lot of sun, has some great sport routes. So a sunny winter day, that could be a pretty good destination. But it could also be, cloudy and raining or snowing as well. And so I think more climbers that I know would be traveling to Chattanooga in the winter to, with their bouldering pads, where they can have a down coat on in between boulders, and that might be a more all-weather possibility. Whereas I think the sport climbing would require a mostly sunny day in the Chattanooga area. So I guess that's it for the questions. Been running here about 50 minutes, so it's, I guess, time to close the cafe down. I really appreciate you joining in. It's fun to do these live streams because I know we have viewers from around the world, from several continents of climbers joining in for these live streams. And perhaps you're watching this after the fact. If so, follow the Training for Climbing YouTube channel, and by subscribing and ringing the bell, you'll get notification when I go live with these in the future, and you can join in live and submit your question, and I will answer it in a future episode of the Training Cafe. So hopefully, as we work through the winter season, I'll be able to set aside time in my schedule to do these every other Monday. So if I can hold to that schedule, then the next Training Cafe would be on Monday, the 23rd, which will be 2 days before the Christmas holiday season. So if you're interested in joining in, maybe put a note in your schedule for noon on the 23rd, and hopefully we can rendezvous here again at that time. Again, thanks for joining in. Really appreciate it, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Until then, climb strong, train hard, and enjoy the month of December.